when it changes to looking at what's right with you. And if you build from that place, just like you would with a student, just because a student might be struggling, I'm not going to just go, well, that kid, I got to work with that kid. And when you change that, they feel that. When you share their strengths, it boosts them up.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here again. Thank you very, very much as always for taking the time to join me today. And today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by counsellor, coach, teacher, principal, author, trainer and consultant Craig Randall, who's here to talk about his work in helping educators maximise teaching, learning and growth, something that's very, very close to my heart. Craig's experience working as a school counsellor, teacher, coach and principal led to the development of a transformative model of teacher observation he calls trust-based observations. And this model focuses on strengths and building differentiated, trusting relationships with each teacher, resulting in creating work environments where teachers feel safe embracing taking risks and experimenting with new practices. Craig currently trains school leaders in trust-based observations, showing them how to lead impactful observations and reflective conversations. In addition, Craig also regularly speaks at conferences around the world. And Craig's book, Trust-Based Observations, Maximising Teacher and Student Learning, was published in 2020 and is a cornerstone of his work today. I am really, really looking forward to this conversation today, being in the education sector. Myself, Craig, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me on, Gary. I'm very excited for the opportunity.
Me too. Me too. So as I like to do, let's start with your journey. I provided a wee bit of information in the bio there, but through your experiences, and we did have a chance to chat about this prior to recording, through your experiences, how did that manifest itself into, I need to do something different here to give myself and other people a different type and style of experience and growth opportunity?
Yeah, I think it really, I mean, I never knew I was going to do this, never knew I was going to be a principal. I started out as a counselor, ended up doing some college basketball coaching, and then my spouse and I decided we wanted to do international school teaching. And when I was there, I think maybe it really started when the elementary principal said, Craig, I think you'd be a good principal. And I was probably reluctant at first, to be honest. And then I found a program. This is all pre-online because it was 2007, I think. And I found a school that would work with me living overseas. And really, I mean, when I started the program, I didn't really like teacher observations. Even when they were done well, they felt like disconnected entities that were never related to the one previous or afterwards. So not really about growth. But I think it really started my very first day in my supervision class. And the man that's become my mentor and dear friend, Warren Aller, in the first day in class, he said, you have to be in classes every day. You have to be focusing on and sharing teaching strengths with them. You have to be building them up. You have to be supporting them. You have to be helping them grow. You have to be asking them what they were doing to help students learn and what they might do better. And it was like when I heard that, just something clicked in me like, oh, this is different. This is new. But it aligned with maybe what I felt, but didn't quite know how to articulate. And then in his class, we would practice doing observations. We'd teach for 10 minutes and then we'd ask these questions and share all the strengths that we did. And then when I got my first assistant principal job, I said, hey, I have this weird new way of doing observations. And I was really lucky. The principal said, let's do it. And we started doing it together and teachers loved it right off the bat. I think they loved that we weren't telling them. We weren't telling them what was wrong. We were asking questions and listening and telling them what we liked. And it was so foreign to their experience that really what ended up happening was they opened up and they trusted and they started asking what they could get better at. And then it just evolved and evolved and evolved from that until maybe 6 years later when another principal in the building I worked at said, Craig, you need to protect your work. And that was maybe the first time I realized, oh, I guess maybe I've kind of created something. And then I presented at a conference. It went well. I thought I should write an article. It went well. And then ended up putting it on paper in the form of a book.
It's such a brilliant journey and so positive in terms of the experience for everyone involved. You as an observer there, you're the auditor essentially of what the classroom experience is, certainly from the educator perspective and seeing probably firsthand.
in a non-judgmental way.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm thinking more so in the earlier days when you're kind of like, "Oh, I don't know how comfortable I am doing this role. I don't know if it's really a fit for who I am, what I want to do, the impact I want to help create." And then all of a sudden you have this epiphany through your mentorship, and I do genuinely want to talk about that. I think that's so powerful in here. And then to reflect that in the experiences of the educator themselves, for them to say, "Here we go again." This is now I'm going to get told all the things I didn't do well. I'm going to try and be on my best behavior, and it's just you're just introducing clunk to the whole process, and it really sounds like through genuine experience and a genuine want and desire to help that you have co-created this incredible experience for everyone involved.
Teachers love it. I mean, it transforms everything. I mean, what ends up happening is with any kind of a traditional model, whether it's more the UK model where it's always about what's next, which is really then saying what you did wrong and I want you to fix, or in the US where we use ratings,
Yeah,
it causes teachers, it causes us as observers to look at what's wrong with you instead of what's right with you, and that colors my whole mindset towards you. And it's not purposeful, but that's what these models do. And when it changes to looking at what's right with you, even if for a weaker teacher there's not as much that's right, there's always something that's right, not more than something. There's things that are right. And if you build from that place, just like you would with a student, just because a student might be struggling, I'm not going to just go, well, that kid, I got to work with that kid. And when you change that, they feel that.
yeah,
When you share their strengths, it boosts them up. And for even those that started out with an open mindset, but sort of became a fixed mindset over time, partially because of things like the way we observe,
yeah,
they transform back into a growth mindset. And if we really want people to improve, to change, to grow, they have to be willing to try new things, but you have to create conditions of safety,
yeah,
psychological safety. So I, as a teacher, know I can try something new, have it be observed, have what I'm trying be a train wreck. Yet my boss, so to speak, principal, is going to say, I love that you're trying something new.
yeah.
Then, when you've created that, growth will follow necessarily. And isn't that what we want kids to do too? We want them to be risk takers. So we better be modeling it in our practice with our teachers so teachers feel safe doing the same thing and getting kids to do it.
Definitely. And one thing that I've observed over time is you get to a situation where when you start to focus on this is what went right, this is what you did well, this is what I really enjoyed and admired, then the recipient of that information starts to go, I kind of like that experience. And then it inspires them to do the same with other people. And I think that goes back to what you were saying about the growth mindset portion, where it's kind of easy to be able to say wrong, 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 why, I have no idea, rather than I really like that. I really would love to understand this at a deeper level. Where were you going with that? What were you hoping to achieve? Let's work on, maybe some modifications that are going to get you the results that you were hoping for in the beginning. I absolutely love that because I think it is inspirational. Where once you have that positive feeling, you want to give that to other people, and it's just a natural byproduct of the positive experience too.
And I'll just add one thing about the suggestion piece that you had. Maybe we work on this. Even that, though, is very by design, very different than what it traditionally is, because really no one likes to be told what to do. And oftentimes in schools, it's, hey, I'd like you to work on this,
Mm,
or I'd like you to work on this, and here's an article. But I mean, it just there's where's the support?
mm,
And so what we've done is we're very purposeful with our language because semantics matter. So our lens is always we have 9 areas of teaching pedagogy, teaching moves that we look at when we're observing. And our lens is always which one, if I help that teacher, would do the most to improve teaching and learning. So once we've maybe ascertained what that is, and after we've built trust, which takes time, so we don't even begin to offer suggestions generally until at least the fourth visit because that trust takes time. And
Yeah.
we see you once every 4 weeks. But we ask permission to offer suggestions. So I'm going to say, hey, Gary, I have a suggestion on working memory and adding reflecting processing activities. Would you like to hear?
Yeah.
And that framing it like that makes such a difference as opposed to Gary, I'd like you to work on.
Yeah.
I'm instantly so much more open. But then we work side by side with you to really work specifically to implement strategies to do that, which could include my modeling it for you, my co-teaching it for you, or whatever. And then we have follow-up conversations even after that, asking what went well, what we can do to support it, and what we can do to make sure we help you to build that regularly into your practice. And that's real support, not just telling you what to do. And again, in the exact same vein that we would want teachers to do with students. So we're modeling all the way, not modeling the model, but it's just because that's how you really support growth.
Yeah, and that's so powerful. It really is, Craig, because what you're doing is you're creating a union, you're creating a partnership as you're moving forward. There's no real discernment between I'm going to give you some suggestions. It's up to you whether you follow them or not, but you really should follow them. It's a case of saying we have a bunch of we have an abundance of tools, systems, processes, observations at our disposal, and some will excuse me, some will work in certain situations and some work in other situations. Would you be open, as you suggested earlier there, to me, providing you an opportunity to dive into this a little bit more? And it's like, my heart today is as a coach, and that's the essence. If I were to sit, even with the best meaning in the world, to sit and you say, Gary, I'm in a bind, I'm in a pinch right now, can you just tell me what to do? I know that you have experience in this. I could. And you would say, thank you very much. And you would mean it, and you would go away, you might implement what it is I've suggested. And then you come back and you say, you're a godsend, thank you very much for doing that. But what you've done there is you've created an unnecessary dependency, because you know that when Craig gets into a bind at some point in the future, he could call Gary and say, listen, just one more time, could you just give me a wee bit of advice on this? And that doesn't help the growth. It stunts the growth. It's actually counterproductive over time, because that dependency is not the point of coaching in and of the first place. You have the answers. You need to find the answers. My job is to navigate the journey with you to help you find the answers. So it's so much of resonance to me, just in terms of the process, in terms of the the co the no, I was going to say codependency. I don't mean that. The actual partnership, the union there. It's there's not one dominant over the other, which is incredible. So during the initial question, you'd mentioned your mentor and the importance of mentorship, and the fact that you hadn't really had a mentor before that. I know that from our previous conversations, and with that said, you're doing well. You're fulfilling your dreams. You're moving forward in your career, but not quite as purposeful, not quite as targeted, not quite as pointed, and maybe dedicated as you can. Tell me about your mentorship experience, how it came about, and the profound effect it had on you.
Yeah, I think as a kid we all would like a mentor, but I think sometimes as maybe a more quiet, shy kid who was well behaved and did decently in school, you kind of just get ignored because you're fine, right? So you never really had that person. And I mean, I'm fine, but and I think I've always been a person of passion, and I pursued like counseling and coaching because I was passionate about those. But just that day, he said those words, and they just like it just resonated. And then I think I never really thought about this before, but I think he saw my passion right away with what he was doing. And I think he saw my excitement at what he believes so deeply in.
Yeah.
He teaches people how to be principals all the time, but I think it's sometimes maybe I'm not giving myself extra credit here, but maybe a little more rare where you see somebody that's totally into what you're into. So in hindsight, maybe that inspired him too. And so but we also practiced together like so often, like a coach really. And so in essence, while we were taking this class, it was a coach, but it was also his mindset about care. And then since then it's evolved and evolved. I kind of think of him as a second father now really, and he's battling some illness right now, and I was just up visiting him last month, and it's joy to spend time with him, and we'll talk, and it's so like I'm so deeply grateful because this whole trust-based observations all came about because I was in this class of his. And I tell him every single time the only reason this exists is because of you, and he downplays it. And I have to say, no, 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 you, because of you, this is happening. And so it's so nice for me to be able to say that to him. It's also so nice for him to be able to hear the stories of how trust based observations is growing and how it's affecting the lives of teachers and leaders. That just because it's him.
Yeah,
I mean, I evolved it more for sure. And so I don't know. I'm just so grateful.
that's such a brilliant story, and I hope and pray that he's going to be okay. And the ability to be able to hear such positive outputs, as to what your legacy is going to be, is so important in the living years. Because all too often these things aren't really observed in the living years at times, and people don't really truly know, and it's only after the fact. So it's such a wonderful gift and opportunity that you have to give him. And I know that he's downplaying it, but the message will be received, I'm sure, and there will be an element of pride in there, absolutely. And also, you mentioned earlier the two questions and you went over them fairly quickly. I'd really love to dive into these questions, why these questions, why they resonated with you, why they're so important, and what they're intended to do.
I mean, one, I got the questions from him. So um, I think I'll just say the questions again. So the first question is, what were you doing? We say pedagogically speaking, and then we say, what strategies were you using? Because the word pedagogy doesn't resonate. So what were you doing pedagogically speaking? What strategies were you using to help students learn? And so, but I'm going to say this, everything about what we do is about trust and about little things that build trust. And so when we ask that question, sometimes people get nervous about it. And we always say, look, we definitely want to hear about the 20 minutes you were in there, but we know sometimes when we get observed, you'll think you just missed the best part or you left right before the best part.
Yeah,
And we always say, if that happened, tell us that too. And just making that little statement,
yeah,
that builds trust and it adds them, it lets them be more relaxed. And if they feel like we saw a boring part of the lesson, which I'm not worried about, then they relax and then they feel more open to answer. But I think that first question, I think both questions really send a message of reflection is an expected part of practice.
mhm,
So I think that's part of it. But it's also like a lot of times people say, what were you doing? But what am I doing doesn't really tell me a lot. What were you doing to help students learn?
yeah,
That's more about the learning and the focus on the impact. So
yes,
it makes me think more specifically about my actions and how they're impacting people. So I think that's part of it. And I think it's also important because a lot of times teachers do what they do without necessarily thinking about it as much as I'd ideally like.
yeah,
But now when we ask that question, and then we'll always reframe their language into the language of teacher pedagogy. So we think that makes them more purposeful in their action and makes them think more about their practice. So like people often say like, oh, so when the kids started working on the project, I went around and make sure everybody understood what was going on. And I helped a few kids. And then there was a small group that you see when I pulled those kids aside, they were lost. So I went back and I retaught it to them. So they'll say it like that, but we'll say, oh, so you were checking for understanding, providing feedback, and differentiating your instruction. And they're like, oh, yeah, yeah, I guess I was.
yeah,
And then they start to think about it more purposefully like that. So that's the first question. The second question is we think is equally important. It's if you had the opportunity to reteach the lesson, what, if anything, might you do differently? And we add that, if anything, part because we don't want teachers to feel obligated, because sometimes I'll see 20 minutes and I think it's brilliant. So we add another little trust piece in there. We just say teaching's hard. Sometimes when you teach, you nail it. When that happens, we want to celebrate it. I never want you to feel like you have to manufacture an answer to this question just because I'm asking. And at the same time, most of the time we tend to think, oh, I wish I would have, or next time I'm going to. And so those things again make teachers feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
And so then we just it just gets them. Often it's not oftentimes. Sometimes people go, "Oh, I think it went pretty well, really," and then they'll go, "Oh, well, and the wheel starts spinning, right?" And because even, I mean, look, I've seen things where I definitely wouldn't change anything,
Yeah.
but most of the time there is, and it just gets them thinking about their practice so they can make it better.
Yeah, those micro feedback. A lot of times in life, feedback is provided either under duress or under particular conditions. We're going to have a feedback session. This is your performance review or something like that. And then as a stigma,
Mhm.
there's an air of yeah, negativity potentially involved in that, especially if there's some surprising information that ends up being imparted to the other person. So when you get the micro feedback, when you get that constancy to say, as you mentioned, reflection is a key part of our job, and I really, it resonates so much with me, Craig, in terms of the work that I do. I teach, I write, I coach, I do business consulting, project management, a whole bunch of different things, and I'm very fortunate to have so many strings to my bow. And one of the key things that I've fashioned over time is, and you can relate this to anything. It can be to a lecture, it can be to a meeting, to a talk that you do, to a conversation that you had. There's the one that you plan, there's the one you have, and then there's the one that you should have had. And that's not to say, as you mentioned also, that you might just nail it and the one that you should have had is actually the one that you had. And it's not to say the constancy of it's never good enough, there's always room for improvement, although I do believe there's room for improvement, but from a positive perspective, so that at the end of it, when I ask myself personally, if it's an internal conversation, to say, what's one thing that could have made that better? I'm more than open to myself, and not from a self deprecating or negative self talk perspective, to say you did it again. What a loser. When are you going to stop doing that? But it's a case of, I probably overdid that topic. They got it the first time. I didn't need to repeat it another two times. I could have moved on and used that time real estate for the topic that actually, as it turns out, they were struggling with, which I didn't think they would be. And then it just becomes this positive flow of information. As I say, sometimes it's between my ears and sometimes it's actually literally in writing, to be able to say, I'm going to just stew on this for a wee bit and I'm going to just try and figure it out. And then it will come to me at some point in the next wee while, rather than what I think I used to do back in the day, was know there was an issue and kind of just push it down a wee bit and maybe deal with it if someone said something or if I had to in some way, and never really never really afford myself the opportunity to reap the rewards of the experience that I just had. It's so rich with information and opportunity to grow and learn.
I mean, I agree. I one of the things that happens to me every single week when I'm training a school is I learn something that makes trust-based observations better. And every week somebody will say something, a little thing pops up. I watch a teacher do something I haven't seen before, so we add that to the form or whatever. So it happens every single week. And the thing is, like, no matter who we all have blind spots. And I always say, like, one of the things when we talked earlier about the areas that we're going to work on with the teacher, we always say it's great that teachers want to work on something, but sometimes what they want to work on isn't the thing that's going to have the greatest impact. And because they've got a blind spot. And my example to the school leaders is, I'm the guy that developed trust based observations, and I have so many blind spots that every single week I learn what one or more of those is to make it better. So it's also, I think it's good. to get outside feedback from that same thing when it's framed in that constructive, positive, supported, trusted way. Because we all have things that it's great that we have self reflection, and the things you were saying and the things I discover on my own are great. But boy, the outside stuff can be really because I'm missing it and I need somebody else to point it out to me.
Yes, definitely. Do you see, in terms of results, and I want to talk about results and measurement criteria and such in a second here, but in terms of results, is there a particular demographic of teachers or educators that are more impacted by, or you see the best, if I could say, in inverted commas, results from? Is it newer teachers? Is it teachers who are at the midway point in their career? Or is it the more tenured? Or do you have a bit of a mean and the impact is somewhat universal?
Not like that, really. I think because you'll see teachers that are first year teachers that are naturals. That's not the norm, right? Because we're learning, but you get those ones that are. You see, you see people early on mid that are so, and you see excellent teaching everywhere, and you're never going to see a building where every single teacher is an A teacher. It's just that's just not the way it works. But I think if you were to look at through lines, passion, I think a deep understanding of relationship and care for kids, like getting to know them on an individual basis. I think having uh, you have to have good classroom management. I mean, it's just because without it, it just doesn't function. And then I think you have to have just an ever growing toolkit of strategies that I use to help kids grow. But I think also a key factor is engagement. Like, what am I doing to make the learning not fluff, not fluff engagement, but that pulls the kids into the learning, that makes them curious, that makes them think, that makes them problem solve on their own, and it involves every kid, so nobody's hiding. And so those are maybe through lines in every teacher I've seen that's like a really, really amazing teacher. And look, most teachers have most of those things anyway. And, but yeah, that's, I think, what stands out most to me.
Yeah, and it's one of these. I ask out of genuine curiosity to see if there are people maybe somewhat resistant to saying, "I know what you're doing. I appreciate it more than the typical observation or audit process, but it's just not for me. I'm too long in
Mm,
the tooth. I'm coming to the end here. Like whatever the particular
it's a
personal."
great question. And so, look, I think we all get into teaching because we want to make a difference in the lives of young people.
Yeah,
And I think for a percentage of teachers, not insignificant, but I definitely wouldn't say majority, we can become more fixed mindset from growth mindset
yeah,
along the way. And there's lots of reasons for that. It could be the way we observe teachers. It could be a tyrannical boss. It could be just my own baggage from home because we all have that. What we find is as we work to build that trust, and there's very specific actions, which I gave you a couple of examples of, and the frequency with which we see you, usually by the fourth visit, and there's a couple of rare exceptions where it takes longer than that, what we find is people with fixed mindsets, because we built trust, because we focused on strength and built from their strengths, they switch and they move back to growth mindset. And so, look, could there be the rarest of rare, like one out of 1,000 teachers that, but that's more on them at that point. But everyone else, they really change back into really being open to growth and making changes to grow their practice. And sometimes, like it, I think rarely, maybe it re-inspires some of them because they feel supported. Who doesn't want to be appreciated? Research says 75% of people leave their work because they don't feel appreciated. If I'm telling you what's next all the time, or I'm giving you a score every time, that doesn't make you feel appreciated.
yeah. So yeah, a great segue into measurement. I know from our conversations prior to and from the information on your website, you see exponential growth in key performance indicators that are standard within the education industry. What's the importance of measurement in terms of trust-based observation and where do you see, what sort of benefits and what sort of incremental growth are you seeing in terms of the positivity of the numbers?
I mean, look, we're new, so we're still compiling some of that. I think the one that stands out most recently is a district we worked with in California. And after they'd had a full year of implementation, they saw the number of kids that reached proficient in math rise by 7.25% just in 1 year, which it's people get excited about 1 or 2%.
Yeah.
And in language arts, ELA, English, whatever you want to call it, they had 12.75%, which is pretty crazy. Those are our big numbers like that. I think what we're even seeing just more consistently regularly is just people talking to us about how the culture is changing and how teachers are way more willing to take risks, and so I and that matters with everything. But and I think maybe, I mean, really what we're looking for is we're looking for some big foundation to take us on as a research project so we can really get some long-term data to show, look, this works better than what we're doing now. But I'm the new guy on the block, so it takes time.
It does indeed. And some other byproducts, thinking from a corporate perspective, you had mentioned earlier the tyrannical boss and situations for when people are leaving. There are student numbers to be absolutely used or observed to see if what we're doing is working in terms of the proficiency or not. And there would also be in terms of retention of educators
That's huge. Yeah.
if you have a particular area or school or district or whatever that demographic looks like, where it's a revolving door, just when we thought we had someone to cover this particular class, grade or level, they had to leave as well. And hopefully over time, when you build that trust, when you have those measurements, when you see the demonstrable results, that people would be more inclined to say, this is why I'm here. The rest of it is actually it's nothing to do with my experience. The whole point is what I'm doing, and I can see the results. Do you see? Have you seen any?
For sure. We get a lot of feedback that teachers are happier, teachers that were going to leave stay, teachers saying, wow, I'm never leaving this school. And look, we've got a teacher shortage worldwide. And I know there's research in the UK regarding Ofsted that shows that factors significantly into teachers leaving the profession, good teachers leaving the profession. And so, yeah, when you feel appreciated, when your strengths are noticed, you're happier and you want to stay. And it affects the whole culture of the whole building. And so, yeah, it's a better work environment.
Definitely. When you feel like you're making a difference, being appreciated is very important. But when you feel that when your efforts are being rewarded, and I don't mean numerically or from a salary perspective, but when you see the fruits of your labor, I imagine it's this self-fulfilling prophecy thing where you end up in a situation where you're like, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's for those wins, for those, and not measured by a number of percentage gains or anything, but it might be that, but the opportunity to look into a child's eyes and see that you got it, that I did spend that extra wee bit of time that I might not have earlier being distracted by the other things that's going on in the classroom or possibly even in the staff room or whatever that looks like too. So very, very interesting. When we chatted before, Craig, as we were setting up the conversation, we talked about collective teacher efficacy.
Yeah.
And it was something so poignant to me that I wrote it down, and I would love you to explain what you mean by that term.
Sure. There's a guy in education named John Hattie, and he did a bunch of research and he went and looked at meta studies on all the different factors that play into learning. And then he was able to, through these meta studies, to determine effect size. And he says anything of zero point 0.4 or above is significant. And so what he found is the highest by quite a significant amount is what we call collective teacher efficacy, and it's a 1.6. So that's 4 times the zero point 0.4. And so, and he's actually said that trust-based observations is collective teacher efficacy in action. And so really what it is when it's as an individual and as a team, grade level or department team, and or as a whole school, it's when we're working to help each other get better. And I'm not just on a silo, I help each other. And like we actually, when I told you before about offering suggestions. There was a young man that we observed not too long ago, and it was we offered him a suggestion and helped him work through a cooperative learning strategy to help literature study to be more impactful and engaging for everyone. And it went amazingly well, so well that the kids came back from recess and said, "Can we keep doing it?" I mean, come on, that's crazy. But the part, the collective teacher efficacy part, is when I was talking to him a couple weeks later, he said, "Oh, Craig, the following Tuesday, we had our grade level meeting, and I was telling all the other teachers on my grade level team about it. Then I showed them exactly how I did it, and now the whole team's doing it."
Yeah.
Like, that's what happens. One person ends up impacting the other, and it all, the whole thing, the whole trust piece, though, makes them comfortable enough to embrace the suggestion, the way we support that suggestion. And all of a sudden, teachers start working together to support each other. And so when you do that, and you create opportunities for that, and we have other ways that we do that too, that's when you're getting that. And that's when you're going to see that biggest effect size on improved teaching and learning.
Absolutely, that collective growth and that excitement, having that atmosphere enough to share. I had a breakthrough in class today. I had an unexpected positive outcome from this thing, and I would like to share. And people are absorbing it and saying, "Oh, I wonder if that would work for me. I haven't experienced that. I'm going to maybe give that a go. Can you tell me a bit more about it?" And then the conversations are much more productive, much more positive than, "Can you believe what they've done again? The funding has been cut. We don't have the supplies. The substitute teaching assistant didn't come in." Or, like, whatever else would happen in terms of daily classroom.
I'll just add a piece to that too. Is that when you in I don't know how in the UK, but in the US they've added merit pay. So based on what your student scores are, you can get extra pay, and it's not even that much. Maybe $2,000-3,000 or whatever. But the research shows as soon as I put merit pay into it, that discovery that teacher had that was so good, he's not going to share that with other people because then he might not get the merit pay because they are. And so it's a massive difference in what's going to happen to a school's improvement.
Yeah, that's a worry. Not that I'm a proponent whatsoever of keeping the salaries low and keeping people, lean and hungry or anything like that. But when you add a tiered system, that's distracting, and then people will focus on the ability to score where they need to score, to get the stats where they need to get the stats, gaming the system somewhat to then, for their own personal gain. And I understand that it's a natural human trait to be able to, or to want to go after as much as you can possibly get. uh, it's when you add, I mean, back to measurement, when you add the right type and style of measurement into play, then you're going to be in a much better situation because everyone is collectively looking to grow. If you add something that is intended to be good but ends up being detrimental in the short to medium to longer term, you've just missed the boat, and that makes me a wee bit sad, I have to say.
It, it, we're
Difficult.
trying to do it different.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, as you know, Craig, this is called the Best You podcast, and what I do is I take an opportunity to ask each guest, what's one regular practice that Craig employs to give him the best opportunity to be the best version of himself each and every day?
I think I'm going to say two. Is one is just resilience. And I mean, I'm trying to grow this thing, competing against a world that's been doing something else for 25 years. And I run into obstacles all the time. And I think, oh, this is going to be the big thing. And then it doesn't quite get there or whatever. And so but you got to keep plugging away. I mean, if you believe in something, you're passionate about it, even it's okay to get down because that's normal, but then you got to keep pushing and fighting. So I think that's maybe a mindset
Yeah,
piece. And then I was thinking about this question, and I mean, work's hard, and energy that you have for work is important. And I live out of a suitcase a lot, and I'm staying in hotels a lot. And so this is probably going to sound silly, but like for me, it's exercise. And I am a Monday through Friday, go to the gym. Sometimes when I'm on the road, it's the hotel gym. And even with that though, like doing my workouts on my own is hard. So I go to class when I'm home, but even when I'm on the road, I have them send me the workouts, and that helps me. So I don't have to do extra time, but putting in that time, it keeps me energized. And when you're on the road, or but any job you have, it makes you it works hard, and you have to find ways to give yourself energy to keep doing your work with passion. So for me, that's what it is.
Absolutely. I love the fact that exercise is in there. It doesn't sound silly at all. It's something absolutely that's so important to fuel us. In terms of the resiliency factor, do you have particular practices that you have to give you that opportunity to feel what you feel, take the lesson from it, and move forward? You know, it's part of the growth process, it's part of the healing process. Is there a specific mantra you use, or a reading that you do, or anything?
I mean, I do meditation. I wish I could tell you as regular with it as I'd like to be. Maybe one thing that I do is I've done some work with EMDR type counseling therapy, and she has this thing called a thought tracking sheet, and it allows us to go through when something's gone wrong and process it, because sometimes we can get a negative mindset about it and view things through a lens that's not necessarily accurate. And as you go through and you look at the problem and then look at maybe what's the core problem and what caused your mind to get to that point,
Yeah,
and then you compare that to the actual reality on the ground, we realize our mind sometimes works against us. Maybe it's the amygdala or whatever, and it lets you come back to a grounded, more centered place. So I don't do that regularly, but when I notice that feeling that something's up, then I'll use that to help myself get back centered again.
fabulous. Excellent. This has been a tremendous conversation, Craig. I knew it was going to be. Before I let you go, where can people find out more about you?
Well, the website is trustbased, TRUSTBASED, trustbased.com. So you can find out there. The book's on Amazon, Trust Based Observations. And you can just email me at craig@trustbased.com. And I'm on, social media, and my handle's always at trustbased.craig. So any of those will work.
Fabulous. And I'll put those in the show notes as well. Craig, thanks a million for coming on the show. I've learned a lot today and absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thanks, Gary. I really appreciated the conversation. It was fun.
Hello again. Thanks again for tuning in to this episode, and I do hope that you found it valuable and gained some insights. I do have an ask for you. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would absolutely love it if you would connect with me on my socials, and that's at LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search for my name and do whatever it is you need to do there to follow me and stay updated with all the latest content, tips, and discussions. And for any more resources that you're looking for, feel free to visit my website, garygillen.com. And while you're there, you can book a free, no obligation 30-minute coaching call directly with me through the site. Whether you're looking to enhance your performance or tackle a new challenge, I'm absolutely here to help you succeed, and I would absolutely love to hear from you. Thanks very much again, and until next time, keep pushing towards your goals and getting better each and every day, my friend.